Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. From the rain-lashed hills of Himachal Pradesh to the submerged streets of Nagpur and thousands of miles away in the flood-ravaged heart of Texas, torrential rains are leaving behind a devastating trail. This past week has been a grim showcase of how violent, unrelenting weather can paralyze cities and shatter lives. In Himachal Pradesh, flash floods have swept away roads, homes and livelihoods. As of 6th July, the state has witnessed 23 flash floods, 19 cloudburst events and 16 landslides, claiming dozens of lives and causing large-scale damage to infrastructure and communities. In Nagpur, relentless rainfall has drowned entire neighbourhoods and forced the closure of highways. And across the globe in Texas, America, it's witnessing one of its deadliest floods in a century, with over 100 lives lost and more than 160 people still missing. The images are haunting, the scale staggering. These incidents across continents are a stark reminder that no geography is immune. The question is, are these just extreme weather events, or is there a deeper pattern at play? Is climate change turning floods into fast-moving, unpredictable disasters? And are we doing enough to build climate resilience? To discuss some of these aspects and more on the program today, I'm pleased to welcome two distinguished guests, Ms. Suruchi Bhadwal, Director, Climate Change and Air Quality at the Energy and Resources Institute. Ms. Bhadwal, welcome to Sansad TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm also delighted to welcome Dr. Vinod Tare, Professor and Founding Head, Center for Ganga River Basin Management and Studies, IIT Kanpur. Dr. Tare, delighted to have you with us on this broadcast as well. Ms. Suruchi Bhadwal, let me begin the program with you. What we are seeing is floods devastating regions as diverse as Himachal Pradesh, Nagpur and miles away even in Texas, America. Is this the new normal that cities across continents are witnessing? What do these events tell us about the changing nature of extreme weather events?
So it's clearly a change that we are observing in the weather patterns over the years. And underlying it is the larger pattern that we talk about is the change in the climate that we are observing. So the new normal that we are talking about with regards to these events are likely to continue to keep changing, and the normal will keep shifting with regards to the extreme nature of events that we keep experiencing over the next many years and over decades, that are to follow as the climate conditions basically enhance. And so we have also said this in the past while we've been carrying out research in these areas, that it is becoming a hotter and wetter world, and therefore these incidences of heavy precipitation, of flash floods, or flood-like conditions, or waterlogging is likely to increase in many parts of the world, including India, the Texas example that you basically gave, and countries need to be prepared with more and more such events in future time periods. The return periods of these events have shortened over time. So a 1 in a 15-year flood event or a 20-year flood event is now striking you in 1 in a 5-year or 1 in a 7-year period. And therefore, the frequency and intensities both have increased world over, including India.
Ma'am, a related question, and for better understanding of our viewers, what we are witnessing is flash floods in hilly regions to urban flooding in cities such as Nagpur. Can we directly link these disasters only to climate change, or are there other compounding factors at play as well?
Well, there are other compounding factors, but first and foremost, the attribution does go to the weather conditions and the climate, because the kind of rainfall that you're experiencing in these regions is unusual. It's unusual from the normal that that particular location or region basically experiences or has experienced in the past. So being able to handle that amount and quantum of rain and water at a given place and time, which the place is not used to, is unusual, and therefore it becomes unmanageable. So that is the first and foremost factor. Of course, it's heavy precipitation. The location region is not used to basically experiencing that kind of rainfall, and therefore the system collapses. Now, the other compounding factors, which kind of, aggravate the situation are to do with our own, management practices. What do we have in place to be able to deal with the situation? How is our infrastructure situated? Can it absorb the kind of quantums, of risk that we are talking about? And the answer is no. Do we have adequate drainage, sewerage systems in place to be able to drain the excess water out if we were to basically face a situation where you have such amount of unusual rains? The answer is no. We are not equipped with our systems, our infrastructure to be able to cushion these kind of risks, because they are not structured and built according to these risks. So
Right.
therefore, what modifications are needed in these systems need to be thought about, and your cities need to be planned accordingly. Your mountains and your river systems need to be gauged accordingly to be able to put the adequate risk resilience requirements, both structural and non-structural, in place.
Sure. So based on various interventions that you've made, and particularly on how severely we've damaged the natural drainage and hydrology, something that I'll get perspectives on from Dr. Tare. But before that, sir, given your experience and your work on river basin and water systems, how do you interpret the increasing frequency of floods and cloudbursts, not just in India, but across the world?
Well, I think I would like to not blame as much as for the climate change, to be very frank. Okay. Because if you really look at the analysis of the data, these kind of intensities of rainfall have occurred in the past. In fact, if you even see the reports, what we say is this has occurred 30 years back. This has occurred 15 years back. It means it is not something that we are talking about something very unusual. Even in Delhi 2 years back, we had unusual floods. But there also we said, no, this kind of rainfall did occur 30 years back or 15 years back or whatever, right? So this kind of landslides, this kind of cloudburst in Himachal, if you look at the last 100 years of hydrological cycle, they do occur such kind of events that were. But what is happening now is the damage is more. Our resilience is less, right? And that is because we have changed the kind of land use and land cover at various places. As a result of that, the relationship between rainfall and runoff has changed, right? So the runoff becomes much faster, okay? And that creates the thing. Same thing in the cities. There is no scope for drainage. There is no scope for that water getting out into the rivers and the reservoirs or the lakes, either because we have created highways and we have not provided enough waterways for that. And this is most of the urban floodings that you see is all as a result of unplanned kind of development that we take place, the highways and roads that we make, flyovers that we make. We do not keep enough consideration to how the water will drain out from these kind of things. Added to that is we have changed the green cover and the places where the water used to percolate down into the groundwater. Now, those places we have converted into concrete places or the tar places, right? And where the runoff is very, very fast. And that is what, in my opinion, is creating much more. So we need to do much better planning of our cities and towns in terms of drainage. And the madam also mentioned we have not done enough, given enough consideration to planning the drainage from the cities. So in my opinion, we are responsible for the damage that we are facing. And yes, I'm not denying completely that there is no climate change, or I agree with madam to some extent that the frequencies have increased. But I'm not very sure about the intensities really have become so high that the problems are more because of the increase in intensity. Yes, we are facing more frequent of these events. That's a different thing. But
Sure.
much of these things, I think we need to blame to our developmental process and the kind of planning that we are doing, the kind of infrastructure that we are building, the population density that is there within a particular geography, mostly in the urban centers. The damage we see is much more.
Absolutely. So in the wake of such disasters and the kind of inundations that we are seeing, particularly in urban centers, what are the strategies that we are adopting, given the limited resources, but also the huge population? Is something that I'll come back to you, Dr. Tare. But let me also get in Ms. Bhadwal's perspective on the very important point that you made, that it's not, that perhaps nature and climate change is not as much to blame as is unregulated construction, concretization that we are seeing, particularly, and deforestation. Ms. Bhadwal, do you think that all of these aspects are turning even the moderate rainfall into major disasters today, and especially in the urban areas, something that we're witnessing in a city like Nagpur?
So, well, a situation with regards to the development aspects and systems in place, etc., definitely aggravate the situation, as I was saying earlier. But I still stick to the argument that the kind of rainfall that is basically being observed is unusual. I'm just giving you examples and figures out there. For example, the Mumbai floods that we have been experiencing over the years, and going back to 2005, Mumbai experiences nearly around 2,000 to 2,200 millimeters rainfall in 4 months across the year. And the rainfall that we experienced in a single day was 50% of that amount in one single day, not spread across the 4 months. Can the city absorb that kind of a shock of 50% of the rainfall of the entire season falling in 1 or 2 days of the month, rather than spread across the season? And that is the shock we are talking about, the intensity with which the rains are falling in different parts of the country. And therefore, no region would be able to basically absorb that kind of a shock until your systems are equipped to handle those shocks. Of course, what further aggravates the situation are encroachment of areas, lack of proper drainage sewerage systems to be able to absorb these shocks, which we are basically experiencing now. And so the climate factor does come in there when we talk about the extreme nature of rainfall that is striking different parts of the world, including our country, to be better prepared with our management systems to be able to deal with it. So what is in place? Every state today has a state action plan on climate change, which tries to look at what the risks are with regards to these factors and what needs to be done across different sectors, including the development aspects of it, to be able to absorb these kind of shifts. While these documents have been prepared and have been in place for the last 10, 15 years that states have prepared, I think what is lacking is the implementation of those actions on the ground. Possibly its lack of both technical and financial resources that are available to the states and the local authorities to be able to take these interventions forward effectively, to be able to make a difference to reduce the related risks that we're talking about. So we do have things in place, we do have documentation in place, but what we lack is possibly taking those actions forward on the ground to be able to make a difference. So, and I think that is where the government and the administration needs to focus on to see what we can do. For instance, in the case of Mumbai, when we had provided information to the state 15 years back that the Konkan region is going to receive more than 20% or 30% of the rainfall it is used to experiencing in the past. Maybe the state needs to plan for it, because Konkan is already a surplus rainfall receiving region. What can the state government do with regards to it? We had provided suggestions, but did the state implement them? The answer is we still do not have an answer to the implementation process that governments have. We had asked and requested them to increase their their drainage structures into the sea, so that the water can be drained out of the city and is into the sea. We had given them other advice with regards to development of water grids, where the surplus water can be transferred to the to other parts of the state which are actually water scarce. So the Vidarbha and the Marathwada regions, for instance, where water basically they have a deficit of rainfall, and it's not equally comparable to what they receive in the Konkan region. And if there is going to be a surplus in the Konkan, what kind of planning can we do basically to divert the water from a water surplus region to a water scarce region? And those are the kind of things we need to deliberate on and think about and possibly implement to be able to make a difference and reduce the overall impact and the risk that we are seeing on the ground.
Certainly. So, Dr. Tare, in the wake of factors which are in the first place leading to these disasters, but there are also factors which are compounding the scale and severity of these disasters. The question that we face today is, how do we strike a balance between development and environment safety? And if we talk from a national point of view, is our national strategy, also our state plans, are we rethinking on how to build cities, how to build urban centers, especially in the fragile ecosystems?
I think what is possible is to take actions at the urban center levels. I think this is where we need to focus on. While of course the interconnecting the rivers, networking rivers is a very larger issue. I think I would like to go for first interconnecting the water bodies at the local scale. Okay, like for example, within the city itself, are we in a position to move water from one place to the other place? I think first priority should be, to the extent possible, do it by gravity. In fact, in short, what we see is, and in Hindi it is much easier said, जो पानी भागता है उसको उसको चलाना है, जो चलता है उसको रोकना है, और जो रोकता है उसको जमीन में पिलाना है. I think it is this kind of strategy at the local scale, and I think this earlier the cities used to do that, but because of the concretization, because of the removal of green colors, green cover, because of the flyovers and other things, we have lost that kind of connection, and that is the reason why most of the water bodies in the city, just after the monsoon, you see them dry. I think our planning should be such that they remain full with water all the time, and that will actually increase the water security as well. So the first thing that we need to do is, yes, while we can talk at the national level and the state level, interconnecting water, transporting water over long distances, that's a very expensive affair. In my opinion, it is not so much environment friendly, but what we can certainly do is at the local scale, right? So can we ensure that all our water bodies receive the water and they are full every year? Can we recirculate the wastewater for the remaining? So what we call it as, we need to talk about what we normally refer to as 330-35 plan. Okay, so 335, 30-35 plan is 330 days our situation is very different. 35 days it is. 35 days we have too much of water, and 330 days we have all wastewater circulating around us. Okay, so the first action that we need to make sure that the rainwater and the wastewater is separated. So most of the natural drains, we have converted them unfortunately into a combined sewer. So we need to make sure that situation is changed. So I think the action, feasible action is possible only at the local scale. So something like urban river management plan, something like at district level, what is the river management plan? Are we in a position to ensure that all our local water bodies, ponds, reservoirs, or even the Amrit Sarovar that we are talking about, are the new water bodies that we are making, is it possible to ensure that there is enough supply, and when we have the rains, that water is circulated within the system, right? So if you have small eddies, they can feed into larger eddies. So first, I think that is more feasible if we can go it, and this is what we are recommending, and a National Mission for Clean Ganga is very actively working on developing what we call it as urban river management plan, or planning at the district level. I think that's a workable geographical unit that we have, where we can plan for the district, and within the district, urban issues are different and the rural issues are different. So I think if we go systematically, that is something which is doable. Of course, that does not mean we should not be looking at a national picture or a state picture. That of course is there, but something within our resources that is possible and that will give direct benefit to the people, because ultimately the money has to come, the resources have to come. The resources will come only when people start utilizing the getting the benefits out of it.
Yes.
And particularly for the cities, when people see that their properties are saved, they are saved from water flooding, then they will not mind paying taxes and other things. I think this is what, since we have not been able to demonstrate that, I think we also face the resource crunch.
Dr. Tare, a related question, and since we are talking about extreme weather events, how it's not just a climate crisis, it's also a planning and preparedness crisis. So in the wake of that, if I could ask you, given our national strategies, you spoke about the state level plans as well, are we investing enough in scientific river basin and watershed planning, or are we still responding to disasters more reactively rather than proactively to avert or perhaps lessen the risk?
Well, by and large, yes, I would say what you are saying is right now we are reactive mode. Okay, but there is enough sensitization, and at the highest level, if you look at our Prime Minister, he keeps talking about these issues, and he has made this as a national agenda that we should be having river-centric planning. Okay, rivers should feed into our GDP. Water bodies should feed into our GDP. I think that is percolating, and particularly if I can say in the state of Uttar Pradesh, we have taken a drive to make sure all small rivers are rejuvenated. Small water bodies are there. There is a mapping that is going on for all the water bodies at the state level, all small rivers, and I'm sure you have heard in Man Ki Baat, Prime Minister himself has given examples of how small rivers have been rejuvenated. Now, what is missing is sustaining those efforts, and these do require, and we have several programs, like for example, we need to integrate several programs into one river-centric or water-centric issues. Like we have Manrega, like we have a Jal Jeevan Mission, we have National Mission for Clean Ganga, Namami Gange program, and similar programs are started for other rivers as well in the country. So I think there is a sensitization that is happening, but I think in action we are still a little slow. But I hope it will pick up. I hope it will pick up, and it should pick up.
Let's hope, and let me also get in Ms. Ruchi Bhadwal's thoughts on what are we doing to build a climate resilient future. Ms. Bhadwal, are we treating climate resilience with the same urgency as we are treating the other critical sectors which will lead us to becoming a Viksit Bharat by 2047? And I ask you this because India is in a very vulnerable geographical situation, and we are quite prone to a lot of these disasters, and therefore we need to be prepared at all levels, not just because, as I said earlier, it's not just a climate crisis, it's a crisis at the planning and also at the preparedness levels.
So we are a developing country, and we already have a development deficit that we see when we talk about our various programs and schemes and how they are rolled out and how they reach the population down below. And if we were not to consider the impacts of these events and include that in our planning, I think we would be way below the kind of development aspirations we have for 2047 with regards to where we would be able to reach with the various schemes and programs that are basically introduced. Okay. Therefore, each of our development programs and plans need to integrate the climate risk resilience component within them as they are being implemented on the ground, so that while you're basically taking, different program schemes which may benefit maybe the communities, it's the farming community, the fishermen, or rural communities, urban communities, in the context of, various benefits that are basically being considered, I think they all need to be screened through a climate lens to be able to see what are the risks, and geographically they are different. So you can't basically use a one kind of a stop shop kind of a model for the entire country. So it needs to be seen differentially across different geographies of the country. What are the risks that are pertaining, the climate risks that are going to pertain, physical risk context because of climate, and that may get aggravated, and what kind of schemes and programs are being rolled out so that, you can integrate the risk resilience agenda with regards to climate within the scope of those schemes. And, because there's a big issue that we basically face, where is the finance for the investments going to come? If there is going to be, an additional requirement with regards to enhancing the implementation of a certain scheme, program, etc. on the ground, I think we need to start with the existing programs and the allocations within the existing programs and schemes and see where we can integrate and look at what the additionality components are with regards to, because of the additional risks we are talking about, because of the climate that may basically, ensue, that the government then needs to consider and then basically look for sources of financing and funding for those investments so that the implementation can happen on the ground.
Absolutely. So lots that we can do. Perhaps what we've discussed so far is maybe, there are isolated incidents that we discussed. But as I said in the beginning, the distress is of the same nature across cities, be it in India or be it in America. And here the problem may be local, but the warning is global, something that we've discussed with both our guests. The nature and the climate is changing much faster than our systems can respond. So our preparedness has to be at multiple levels. We're working on that, but as both our guests suggested, there's a lot more that we can do, and perhaps it's time to switch from that reactive mode to a more proactive mode, wherein we can avert the risks and reduce loss of lives and damage to property as well in the times to come. Time allows me to take up only that much on the program today. Thank you once again to both my guests for joining me on the program, sharing your thoughts, your views with us and our viewers on this very pertinent topic. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.